Hi everyone, I'm Asia Celestino and you're watching BeBelieveTV. Today our guest is Dr. Richard Laub, the scientist behind ViraSil. Dr. Laub, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, you're certainly welcome. My pleasure.
Yeah, no problem. So can you give a little bit of the background behind ViraSil? What is it and what is humic acid?
Well, ViraSil contains humic acid, which is the active ingredient. Humic acid is a soil extract. It actually is found in deposits throughout the world. When it's sourced properly, processed correctly, and tested, it is a very effective, broad spectrum, all natural antiviral.
Wow, and what is the science behind it? How does this, it seems like a miracle, how does this miracle humic acid work?
Humic acid binds to viruses. It doesn't kill viruses, it just binds to viruses, and it blocks the sites that viruses use on their surfaces to attach to host cells. All mammalian viruses reproduce the same way. They have to attach to a host cell, and they inject their RNA or their DNA into the interior of the host cell. They trick the cell into making more baby viruses, which then bud out through the cell wall and go on to repeat the process. Well, what humic acid does, that is ViraSil, is it binds to viruses and it blocks that attachment step. It prevents viral fusion to a host cell, and so it thereby limits the reproduction of the virus. That gives the host immune system a huge leg up that is a boost in being able to combat viral infections.
And for those who don't know, humic acid is found in the earth. It's a very natural element. What is the difference between organic humic acid and what you're doing with ViraSil?
Well, humic acid itself is organic to start with. It's really composted plant material that's 50,000 to 100,000, 200,000 years old or so. It's on the way to becoming coal. Coal is millions of years old, but humic acid is young coal, sometimes called brown coal or leonardite. It's still got most of the properties of composted organic material, that is plant material, not yet the properties of coal. But again, when it's sourced, processed, tested properly, it's a very effective, all-natural, broad-spectrum antiviral.
Can you share your mission with BeBelieve?
Well, the real mission is to bring some help for human viral disease worldwide. We're faced today with any number of outbreaks, the worst of which, although not in numbers, but certainly in terms of potential deadliness, is Ebola in West Africa. That's a viral hemorrhagic fever virus. There are many other viruses, though. The flu still kills 20,000 to 50,000 people in the United States every year. So that in itself is a deadly disease. We really don't have any medicines at all to combat viral disease of any kind, really. We are, in a sense, in terms of treatment, no better off today than we were in 1918, when the Spanish flu killed somewhere between 50 million and 300 million people worldwide. We are faced with the same deadly threat of viral disease today that we were then, and we really don't have anything to treat viral disease. But now there's ViraSil, and now there's hope.
Such a fascinating and commendable mission. And I wanted to ask, because it seems like this is all good coming from your company, are there any challenges that you're facing?
Well, the challenge really is education. Educating the public that yes, there is something for viral disease, whether it's flu, hemorrhagic fever viruses, dengue, norwalk virus, herpes, hepatitis. There is something available to help fight viral infection.
You're obviously a passionate person, so why BeBelieve out of all of the different organizations that you could partner with?
Well, BeBelieve is very interesting to me because it has extensive distribution capabilities. That is, it can get this material out to the public, which is where it's needed. It doesn't do any good to have a great product and have it sit on a shelf in my laboratory. It needs to be publicized, marketed. The public needs to be educated that there is something available and that it's called ViraSil.
Dr. Lob, how do you envision your objectives and all of the work that you're putting in toward ViraSil? What does the future look like?
Well, we certainly would like ViraSil to become very well known, just as well known, for example, as aspirin or vitamin C, because ViraSil literally can help prevent viral disease when taken on a prophylactic basis. And it's also an effective therapeutic. That is, if you become sick with a viral disease, ViraSil can help combat that disease. So for the future, my biggest hope is that this material becomes very well known worldwide. That process, by the way, takes about 10 years. And since we really began exposing ViraSil to the world commercially, we have a few more years to go, but we're building momentum all the time and educating the general populace as to, first, the availability of ViraSil, and secondly, the effectiveness of ViraSil in helping human health.
That's such an exciting mission. After this, we're going to be discussing more about the viral immunity industry, so stick around. You're watching BeBelieve TV. I'm Asia Celestino. Hi everyone, you're watching BeBelieve TV. I'm Asia Celestino, speaking with our guest, Dr. Richard Lob. Dr. Lob, how do you see the viral immunity industry in its trends and how it's transforming?
Well, certainly it's the case that at the present time there are very few viral medicines, whether they're prescription drugs or over-the-counter remedies. There are a great many very, very effective antibiotics for bacteria, but the same cannot be said for viral disease. ViraSil represents a real breakthrough in terms of the common, that is over-the-counter availability of something that will help combat in a serious, efficacious way viral disease. And that's a huge plus for public health.
And we know with antibiotics it can be a slippery slope, talking about things like superbugs. Is there any sort of danger like that in the viral immunity industry?
Well, not really, because the way ViraSil works is it binds to the surfaces of viruses. Viruses need to attach to host cells to reproduce. Well, when ViraSil attaches to the surface of a virus, it can no longer fuse to a host cell, and so it can't reproduce. Well, there's no real way for a virus to develop immunity to that. There's no way for it to mutate in any shape or form to overcome the binding of ViraSil to its binding sites. If the virus doesn't reproduce that way anymore, that is by attaching to a host cell. It's no longer a virus. And so viral fusion inhibitors in general have proven to be very effective short-term as well as long-term against viruses. And ViraSil is no exception to that. This material is going to be broad-spectrum effective for a very long time against very many different viruses, mammalian viruses, because they're all the same. One of the big advantages of ViraSil, by the way, is that ViraSil is a high molecular weight material, about 50,000 Daltons or so. And what that means is that ViraSil is like a big floppy beach hat. It can twist and conform and change its shape to fit virtually any geometry of the sticky sites on the surface of viruses that the viruses use to bind to host cells. So it doesn't matter how the virus changes those binding sites or those binding site geometries. Humic acid, the active ingredient in ViraSil, can bend and twist and conform to whatever geometry there might be. And so it's going to be virtually impossible for a virus to mutate to some form that ViraSil is not effective against.
And you mentioned this is a broad spectrum product. It's really broad because, as far as I understand, you can use this for pets, right?
Absolutely. Mammalian viruses in general, and pets are animals just as well as humans are. And so for dogs, for example, we're talking about parvovirus, which is very deadly. For cats, feline leukemia virus, porcine respiratory virus in pigs, strangles in horses, Newcastle viral disease in chickens. These are all viruses that are more or less deadly for a given animal. And it turns out, again, that since humic acid, as ViraSil is broad spectrum, it's effective against all of those viruses. That is, it really is broad spectrum.
This is groundbreaking, and I think it brings up a particularly good issue for you in that since it can be applied to almost anyone or any being, is there a specific niche that you're targeting in the market to bring your product forward, or is this something that you would just like to have available for everyone?
Human viral disease is the target. That is, we really want to impact the human condition. And it's such a challenge because there are so many viruses that are out there that are attacking people. And some of the worst are hemorrhagic fever viruses. Ebola in Africa, for example, the various strains of Ebola, Marburg, some of the dengue fever virus outbreaks, particularly in Chiapas in Mexico, for example. Influenza. Influenza is still a deadly disease. The flu still kills 20,000 to 50,000 people every year in the United States, regardless of whether there's an outbreak or not. In outbreak times, it's even worse. It kills many more people. So there are just so many viral challenges to human health. That's really what ViraSil is trying to address.
With your work in coordination with BeBelieve, how can people kind of put that into perspective? You can take ViraSil on a daily basis to prevent things like the common cold. What will it be like to prevent a deadly virus in another country?
Well, ViraSil is broad spectrum, and so it will help combat virtually any human viral condition. It limits viruses in their ability to reproduce, and so that greatly helps the host immune system to come in and kill the virus. The only difference really from my standpoint as a scientist in terms of deadliness of viruses, if you will, is how efficient they reproduce. Ebola is very efficient at reproducing. It doesn't care really what kind of host cell it attaches to. And so as a result, the death rate from Ebola is 60–70%. If you catch Ebola, you're dead in about 5 to 10 days. Essentially, you bleed to death. On the other hand, something like influenza is very specific to upper respiratory tract tissue. And by and large, young healthy people can overcome the flu. Young healthy people don't normally die of the flu. It's the elderly or the very young who have problems with the flu. So the viral ability to reproduce, the efficiency at which viruses reproduce, really, from my standpoint, determines how deadly they are. Anything that we can do to slow down that efficiency, reproductive efficiency of viruses, will help combat the disease. And that's exactly what ViraSil does.
What is the projected time frame to eradicate a virus from someone's immune system, whether, I guess you could compare the flu versus something deadlier like Ebola?
Well, it really depends on the virus. For the flu, a day and a half to 2 days, and you're over and done with it when you take ViraSil. Hepatitis C, for example, 4 to 6 weeks in combination with an immune system booster, and you're over and done with it. So it really depends on the virus. But in the case of deadly viruses like Ebola, the main thing is to stay alive. If this reduces the death rate from Ebola, that in itself is a victory. So just staying alive with the more deadly viruses is a great benefit to humankind, and that's what ViraSil is.
We're going to talk more about this, but we have to take a short break. Stay tuned, because after this break, we're talking about the future of ViraSil and how it affects you. I'm Asia Celestino. You're watching BeBelieveTV. Stay tuned. Hi everyone, I'm Asia Celestino and you're watching BeBelieveTV with our guest, Dr. Richard Laub. Dr. Laub, let's talk about the future of ViraSil. What are your plans moving forward to bring this to the market and bring it more to people's awareness?
Well, it's a matter of education. The public needs to be made aware that there is something called ViraSil that will help combat viral disease. So it's all about education. It's not really marketing. It's bringing to the public's attention the existence and then the availability of ViraSil.
Do you have a plan to bring about this awareness?
Well, what we're doing today, for example, bringing the material to the attention of whoever's watching today, but also print literature, expos, just generally trying to go down as many paths as we can that provide education as to existence and availability and efficacy as well. We really want people to understand that ViraSil really is a broad spectrum antiviral, and it's all natural. There's nothing added to ViraSil. It comes out of the ground and it's here today and available.
And this is an overall good product, partnering with BeBelieve, a good organization. How do you kind of decide which publications or which events to attend and be associated with?
Well, those that are focused on natural products industry, of course, are first and foremost. So, for example, there's the Natural Products Expo that's held on the West Coast, and then alternatively later in the year on the East Coast. Supply Side East, Supply Side West. Those are very good shows as well. They're very good venues for publicizing ViraSil in terms of there is something out there that will impact viral disease. Because truth be told, there's very little in the way of medicines, whether they're prescription drugs or over-the-counter drugs, that will help in the case of viral disease. All the way from common cold to hepatitis to hemorrhagic fever viruses like Ebola to Norwalk virus on cruise ships, all of that kind of thing, that huge range of different kinds and shapes and forms of viruses that can infect people. We need to make the public aware that there is something out there that can help.
First and foremost, you are a scientist. So do you have any advice for someone who is within their industry but sees an opportunity for entrepreneurship?
Well, there certainly is in virtually any case where someone is excited about what they have to hand, and that whatever it is they have to hand is worthwhile promoting. So, for example, a new way of making luggage, for example. If someone were working at a factory making luggage and saw or had an insight as to better ways of making luggage, then they might very well want to go out on their own and start doing it by themselves. The whole key to entrepreneurship really is, there are two things. The first thing is you really have to believe in the product or products or services that you're offering. And the second thing is that your product or products or services have to be worthwhile. There actually has to be something there. The public is very good at seeing through things that are just a lot of hype, that don't really do what they claim. And the marketplace is very efficient at eliminating materials that aren't effective, that don't work, that just aren't worthwhile. They're not worth anything. And so that aspect of entrepreneurship, having something worthwhile, is very important. But equally so, if not more so, is your belief in what you're doing, because that will carry you through some hard times. And believe me, in entrepreneurship, starting out on your own, there will be a lot of hard times where you question what you're doing, you are down to your last nickel, and you don't know where you're going and what's coming next. But your belief in what you're doing will sustain you through those times.
I agree completely with you, and I wonder, because you have so much experience in this industry, how have you seen it change from, say, the 90s and early 2000s to now with all of the social media? How has it affected your experience with this industry?
Well, the nutraceutical industry certainly has exploded over the last couple decades or so. And the reason is that well, there are several reasons. First, there are materials now available in the nutraceutical industry that are really very powerful in terms of helping human health. The second is just outright discouragement with the pharmaceutical industry. Companies promote materials that are barely able to do anything, and yet these companies make billions of dollars in sales, literally billions of dollars. Something like Tamiflu, for example, which is hardly effective at all against the flu. It has billion-dollar sales figures every year because there is nothing else. And so if you get something like the flu, and you're reaching for straws, Tamiflu really is the only straw out there to reach for. But it's a very short straw. It just literally does not do very much good at all, as opposed to something like ViraSil, which is over the counter, hugely cheaper, less expensive than something like Tamiflu. Doesn't require a prescription. Flu is over in a day and a half to 2 days with ViraSil, something like that. That's a really major step forward. And the nutraceutical industry in general has been enjoying successes like that for several years now. And so the industry itself, alternative medicine, if you will, is really going very rapidly. So in general, what we can say about the nutraceutical industry is, to paraphrase Winston Churchill, we're not at the end. We're not even at the beginning of the end, but we are perhaps at the end of the beginning.
A very hopeful message. Thank you so much for providing your insight on our show.
Yes, you're certainly welcome.
And thank you for watching. This has been BeBelieveTV. I'm Asia Celestino, and know that if you'd like to get more episodes or information about our show, you can visit BeBelieveTV.com.